She didn't choose the battlefield chose her. And when it did, it tried to break her in every way a human being can be broken. But here's the thing about certain women: the harder life hits them, the more dangerous they become. Her name was Maya Reyes, 26 years old, 5 feet 4 inches of quiet fire. She wasn't the kind of woman who walked into a room and demanded your attention. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and you felt something shift, like the air itself straightened up when she arrived. But if you saw her 5 years before this story begins, you wouldn't believe she was the same person. Because 5 years ago, Maya Reyes was barely breathing. She grew up in a small military town in the eastern part of the country, where the sound of boots on gravel was as familiar as birdsong. Her father, Colonel Emilio Reyes, was a decorated soldier, stern as iron, proud as a flag in the wind. Her mother had left when Maya was 7, not because she didn't love her daughter, but because she couldn't survive the silence that filled their house. The colonel didn't do warmth. He did discipline. He did structure. He did strength. And Maya, she did everything her father asked. She woke at 5 every morning. She ran 3 miles before school. She studied hard, spoke little, and learned early that feelings were a luxury soldiers couldn't afford. By the time she was 18, she had earned a place at the National Military Academy, the youngest woman from her region to do so. Her father shook her hand at the gate the morning she left. No hug, no tears, just a firm grip and 3 words: "Don't embarrass me." She didn't. She excelled. She trained harder than anyone in her unit, pushed through injuries that sent others to the medical bay, and earned the respect of officers twice her age. For 2 years, she was exactly what her father had built her to be: a machine, precise, controlled, unbreakable, until the day she was broken. It happened during a routine training exercise in the mountains, a navigation mission for soldiers, a snowstorm that nobody predicted. When the team got separated in the whiteout, Maya made a split-second decision to go back for the youngest recruit, a 19-year-old boy named Felix who was panicking and lost. She found him. She saved him. But in doing so, she fell down a rocky embankment hidden beneath the snow. The fall shattered her left knee, cracked 2 ribs, and left her unconscious in the freezing dark for nearly 4 hours before the rescue team found her. She survived. Felix survived. Everyone survived. But the military board ruled her decision a deviation from protocol. She had broken formation. She had acted on emotion rather than strategy. And in the world of the colonel, and of the institution he served, emotion was the enemy. They discharged her. Honorably, yes, but discharged. Maya came home to a father who couldn't look at her. She came home to a town that whispered behind her back. She came home to a body that wouldn't work the way it used to a knee that screamed every time she climbed the stairs. 2 nights that were longer and darker than anything she had ever trained for. She had spent her whole life becoming something, and now, in the eyes of everyone who mattered to her, she was nothing. She was 21 years old, and for the first time in her life, she sat down in the middle of her pain, and she didn't know how to get up. For weeks, she barely left her room. The trophies on her shelf collected dust. The running shoes by the door sat untouched. Her father moved through the house like a ghost, present but not there, close but unreachable. He brought food. He paid the medical bills. But he never once asked her how she felt, and she never told him. She started to disappear into herself, quietly, the way good soldiers do, not with screaming or drama, but with silence, withdrawal, a slow fading. Her old friends from the academy sent messages she never answered. Her coach from training called twice. She let it ring out both times. There was one person, though, who wouldn't let her fade. Her name was Dr. Lena Okoye, the town's only sports rehabilitation therapist. 40 years old, Nigerian-born, with a laugh that could crack concrete and eyes that saw everything you were trying to hide. Lena had heard about Maya through a mutual contact and showed up at the Reyes house one Tuesday morning uninvited, carrying a folder of physical therapy exercises and a box of her mother's jollof rice. Maya came to the door in sweatpants, hair unwashed, eyes flat. Lena looked at her for a long moment, and then she said something nobody had ever said to Maya Reyes in her entire life. "You don't have to be strong right now, but you do have to let me help you." Maya stood in that doorway for a long time. She didn't cry. She wasn't built for crying, not yet. But something inside her, something very small and very tired, took one cautious step toward the light. She opened the door wider, and that was how it began. Lena came back every Tuesday and Thursday. At first, Maya treated the sessions like military drills, something to endure, not engage with. She followed instructions silently, completed the exercises, and watched the clock. But Lena was not the kind of therapist you could keep at arm's length. She talked while they worked, not about feelings. She was too smart for that, too experienced with women like Maya to make that mistake this early. She talked about other things, about her own life in Lagos, about the first time she watched a female sprinter compete in the Pentank Olympics and felt something ignite in her chest that she still could unfully describe. She talked about the strange science of healing, how bone and muscle remember trauma but also remember strength, how the body keeps score, yes, but the body also keeps hope. Slowly, without meaning to, Maya started listening. By the 4th week, she was asking questions. By the 6th, she was doing extra exercises between sessions. By the 8th, she was running again, just a slow jog around the block, knee wrapped tight, jaw set, but running. And if you had watched her from a window that morning, you would have seen something in her face that wasn't there before. Not happiness. Not yet. But something harder and quieter and more lasting than happiness. Determination. It was Lena who first noticed it. During a session one afternoon, Maya was working through a resistance drill and her form shifted unconsciously, naturally, into something fluid and powerful that made Lena stop and stare. "Have you ever watched competitive kickboxing?" Lena asked. Maya looked up. "Why?" "Because the way you move," Lena said slowly, "is either going to destroy you or make you a champion, and I'd rather it be the second one." Maya almost laughed. "Almost? I'm not a fighter." Lena raised one eyebrow. "Maya, you walked back into a snowstorm for a stranger. You survived for hours unconscious in freezing temperatures. You got discharged from the career you built your entire identity around, and you're still standing." She paused. "What do you call that?" Maya had no answer, so she stayed quiet. But that night, she searched kickboxing on her laptop for 3 hours, watched match after match, watched women with fire in their eyes step into rings and throw everything they had at each other, not out of anger, but out of something deeper. Out of love for what the body could do when the mind stopped being afraid. She went to the only gym in town the next morning. It was run by a retired boxer named Marco Silva, 60 years old, gray-bearded, permanent scowl, the kind of man who had seen 100 hopefuls walk through his door and leave when the work got real. He watched Maya tape her hands in the corner without being asked, watched her warm up, watched her hit the bag once, twice, 3 times, with technique she had no business having on her first day. He walked over, crossed his arms. "Where did you learn to hit like that?" "I didn't," she said. "The army taught me to control my body. I'm just applying it." Marco studied her for a long moment. Then he uncrossed his arms and said, "Come back tomorrow. 6 in the morning. Don't be late." She wasn't late, not once, not in 9 months of training that stripped her back to nothing and rebuilt her from the foundation up. Marco was merciless in the best possible way. He found every weakness and pressed on it until it became a strength. He found the places where Maya had been protecting herself out of fear, and he gently, relentlessly, made her go there anyway. And somewhere in those 9 months, something extraordinary happened. Maya stopped fighting to prove something to her father. She stopped fighting to recover what the military had taken from her. She started fighting for herself, for the sheer electric joy of knowing what her body could do, for the discipline that now came from love instead of fear, for the woman she was becoming, who was quieter and fiercer and more fully alive than anything the colonel had ever tried to build. She entered her first regional competition 8 months after walking into Marco's gym. She was nervous in the dressing room, genuinely, deeply nervous in a way she hadn't been since her first day at the academy. She sat on the bench and stared at the floor and breathed. Then she thought of Felix, but with something that burned clean and clear in his young eyes. Gratitude, the look of someone who understood that another human being had chosen to risk everything for them. She had been discharged for that choice, punished for it, and she had merely let that punishment convince her that the choice itself was wrong. But it wasn't wrong. It was the most right thing she had ever done. She stood up, she rolled her shoulders back, she walked out to the ring, and she fought the way she had always wanted to live, fully, honestly, without holding anything back. She won, not just the match. She won the whole regional tournament, 4 fights in one day, the last one going to 3 rounds against a woman 2 years her senior, with 12 more competitions under her belt. Maya won on points, by a margin that made the judges look at their scorecards twice. In the crowd, Lena was on her feet, screaming. Marco was not. Marco stood with his arms at his sides and his eyes bright and his jaw tight. The way men who love something deeply try not to show it, but his eyes never left her. And in the back row, standing slightly apart from everyone else, wearing civilian clothes for the first time Maya could remember, was her father, Colonel Emilio Reyes, still watching. She saw him when they raised her hand, and for one long moment, their eyes met across the noise and the lights and the years and the distance that had always been between them. He didn't smile. He wasn't built for smiling, but he nodded, slowly, once. And for Maya Reyes, who had spent 22 years trying to earn something from the man who made her, that single nod cracked something open that no snowstorm, no discharge paper, no months of silent darkness had ever touched. She didn't cry, not in the ring, but later, in the dressing room, alone with her wraps and her water and the beautiful ache of a body that had given everything it had. She let it out, quietly, the way good soldiers sometimes finally learn to do. Not because she was broken, because she was finally, completely free. The wind changed things, but not in the ways Maya had expected. She had always imagined that winning would feel like an arrival, like stepping through a door into a room where everything was finally okay. She'd been taught her whole life that achievement was the answer. Train harder, perform better, earn the result, receive the reward. Clean and simple. But victory, she discovered, is not a destination. It's a mirror, and what it shows you is not a finished version of yourself. It shows you exactly who you are in this moment, and then, with a quiet, relentless honesty, it asks, who do you want to be next? The months after the tournament were both the most exciting and the most disorienting of her life. Offers came flooding in. 2 other gyms wanted her to train with them. A sports sponsorship company reached out, and a journalist from a national magazine wanted to write a profile on the former military recruit turned competitive fighter. Maya read these messages with a kind of numb bewilderment. She had spent so long just surviving that she hadn't thought about what came after. It was during this time that she started journaling. Her friend Lena had suggested it months earlier, and Maya had dismissed it as a soft, feelings-based activity she had no patience for. But now, in the strange quiet that had settled after the storm, she found herself reaching for a notebook in the early mornings before training. She wasn't ready to process the big traumas yet. Instead, she wrote about small things. The way the light came through the gym window at 6 a.m., the sound of the bag hitting the chain on a perfect strike, the way her coach, Marco, corrected her footwork with a single word, and how that word unlocked something in her body. She wrote about Felix, about the mountain, about the cold, and one morning, unexpectedly, she wrote about her father. The words just came, slow and careful, like testing ice before walking on it. She wrote about being 7 years old and asking him why he never hugged her the way other fathers did. He had looked at her with those measured eyes and said, because strength is its own form of love. She had accepted this as truth, as law, as the shape of the world. She had spent nearly 20 years living inside that definition, becoming strong so that he would love her, staying strong so that he would keep loving her. She never understood that what she was really doing was substituting performance for connection, discipline for intimacy, achievement for the one thing she actually needed, to simply be seen. She put down her pen, sat for a long time in the early morning quiet. Then she picked up her phone and called him. He answered on the second ring, which surprised her. The colonel was not a man who rushed toward things, Maya, he said. His voice was the same as always, measured, contained, like a room where all the windows are slightly open but never thrown wide. Dad, she said, and then she didn't know what to say next. She had no agenda, no prepared speech. She was just a daughter calling her father because she missed him in a way she was only now learning to name. The silence stretched between them. Then the colonel cleared his throat and said, in a voice that was almost different from his usual one, I watched the footage again. From the tournament. 3 times. Maya's chest tightened. Yeah, your left jab is stronger than it was in the first round. A pause. You adjusted mid-fight. That's another pause. And in that pause was a whole language that neither of them had ever been taught to speak. That's not something you can teach. That's instinct. You were always like that, even as a child. You saw things others didn't. It wasn't, I love you. It wasn't, I'm sorry. It wasn't the Hollywood moment of tearful reconciliation. But it was real. It was him. It was the colonel opening one of those windows just a little, just enough for the air to move through. I know why you went back for Felix, he said quietly. I've always known. He stopped. Started again. I was afraid of what it meant. That you were capable of that kind of caring, she offered. A long silence. Yes, he said finally. I was afraid it would make you vulnerable. I thought I was protecting you. Maya closed her eyes, felt the shift, the slow, tectonic movement of something very old and very heavy beginning to loosen. It did make me vulnerable, Dad, she said. It also made me the person I am. She went on to compete nationally. She won the women's middleweight championship 2 years later, standing on a podium with a medal around her neck and tears she did try to stop this time, running freely down her face. She had dedicated the fight to Felix, Lena, Marco, and, as she wrote in the program, the version of me who learned that coming back for someone is never the wrong choice. But the thing Maya became most known for, more than the titles, more than the sponsorships, was a speech she gave at a young women's leadership conference. She stood at a lectern in a room of 500 women, many of them young, many carrying the weight of things they hadn't yet found words for. And she said something that people still quote today. She said, "The world will spend a lot of energy trying to convince you that your softness is a weakness and your strength is all you have. Don't believe it. Your ability to feel deeply, to go back for people, to be cracked open by life and still keep moving, that is not a flaw in your design. That is the whole design. You are not broken. You are being built." The room was silent for 3 full seconds after she finished. Then it erupted. Somewhere in that crowd, a young woman who had been sitting with her arms folded and her jaw tight the way women who have been taught not to cry hold themselves together, and crossed her arms, put her hand over her heart, let herself feel it. Maya didn't see her, but somehow, she knew she was there. She had been that woman. She still was, sometimes, and that was perfectly, completely okay. The strongest thing you will ever do is not push through alone at opening the door when someone offers to help. Healing is not weakness. Feeling is not failure. And going back for someone, even when it costs you everything, is never the wrong choice. You are not being broken. You are being built. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that build us up.